let's drink a Monster and get to talking some news. For this week's news, we have some interesting stories from a camera the size of a crumb and a just released camera that shoots in 991 frames per second at 4K resolution. Crazy camera. But our first story, we were actually going to go to Hollywood, where they actually did something affordable for once. In conjunction with the makers of the new film The King's Man, Australian company Blackmagic Design announced that Davinci Resolve was used throughout the digital intermediate pipeline of the 20th Century Studios' new action film. Adam Glassman, the senior colorist at Gold Crest Post, who led the final grade for the movie, explained that the two previous films in the Kingsman series are quite vivid, bold, and glossy, but because of the subject matter of this particular movie, Ben Davis, the director of photography, wanted to go in a more somber direction with a subtle and desaturated look and feel. Glassman utilized Davinci Resolve for the primary log grade, HSL, Keir, and roto shapes for the sections of the movie showing the First World War trenches. And for one scene including candles at a Russian palace, Glassman said it was achieved by using curves, saturation versus luminance, plus the HSL Keir to select and increase the saturation on the gilt and gold decoration. And while it's fascinating that Davinci Resolve, that just costs around $300 for its full version, was used in the making of a blockbuster film, it was actually the other product they used from Blackmagic Design that was a bit more intriguing. Director of photography Ben Davis decided on using BMD's Pocket Cinema Camera 6K and Micro Studio Camera 4K for its quick action sequences. Davis noted the decision being all about size. Lightweight, versatile camera technology like this has changed the way we shoot nowadays, since you can put it in places that you simply can't get to with a larger camera. You can put cameras of this size on mini stabilized rigs, and it changes the dynamic of cinematography completely. And you might be wondering why this is so impressive that these particular cinema cameras were used in a movie like this. Well, when you consider that the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K costs around $2,000 and the Micro Studio Camera 4K costs around $1,295, it starts to make a bit more sense. While some cinema cameras like ARRI and RED cameras cost more than an expensive car or even a house at times, it's encouraging to see cameras that are in the range of everyday users or film students be used in the film industry. And while skill, experience, and knowledge will always be key in making good movies or videos, having access to cameras like this that for a century have been reserved for big budget studios will culminate, I think, in the rise of new directors and DPs that may have not had a shot before. Much like how streaming services like Spotify shook up the music industry. Next up, we have a camera that should probably only be used by the slow-mo guys or the DP from The Amazing Spider-Man 2 that wants to force you to watch a main character fall painfully slow to their death. That's what Vision Research introduced this week with its brand new 4K high-speed camera, the Phantom S991. Like its name implies, it boasts the ability to film up to 991 frames per second at 4K through the Phantom Flex 4K sensor that primarily serves filmmakers. The Phantom S991 delivers 70 gigabit per second of throughput and the power of the Phantom Flex 4K sensor with CXP-Over-Fiber technology for extreme high-speed imaging. It uses two fiber cables to capture this data between two frame grabbers that are stitched together for a high detailed image. It's a highly fascinating, versatile, ultra high frame rate camera that will be interesting to see what use is made of it. If you're one to like to dig through all the crazy technical data and specs of this camera, we've included a link to this camera below. So for our final story of the show, Felix Heide, a computer scientist at Princeton University, along with colleges from the University of Washington, have developed what can really only be described as a terrifying marvel of camera technology. They have developed a tiny camera the size of a coarse grain of salt that could potentially be used by doctors to take images inside your brain or dive into the depths of your blood vessels like James Cameron in his deep sea sub. Let's just hope that this camera doesn't give him more ideas for world building in Avatar. That's a terrible joke. Felix Heide says he had to take a radically different approach to building an actual lens for this camera. Lenses haven't been miniaturized at all, Heide says, and Actually, that's very true. In the past century, very little has changed in the basic construction of lenses. And while lenses are typically made out of glass or plastic, Heidi and his team created one from what is known as a metasurface. These incredibly thin man-made surfaces are created with tiny structures throughout and are so small they have to be measured in nanometers. And they had to figure out a problem on how to make a lens out of a specific pattern of a metasurface consisting of about 1.6 million tiny metal rods that create the lens itself. Obviously, figuring out the pattern for these metal rods to even produce a semi-clean image was not easy and would take far too long to manually calculate. So Heidi's team wrote a computer program to simulate the light passing through the lens to get the arrangement just right. One problem they ran into after figuring out the correct pattern for the metasurface was that the metasurface lens was not able to completely focus all of the light passing through. The team again turned to computer simulations and used image processing to help make the photos sharper and fully in focus. As you can see, the quality of the photos they've been able to take with a camera this small is beyond incredible, and at the same time very concerning on what it could be used for outside good intent. But while there are consequences to emerging technology like this, it's kind of fun to think about all the possibilities this type of research and development could bring to every part of the camera industry. Imagine just one day being able to film by just using your eyes to look at something. And that's it for our news this week. Be sure to check out this other video right here. I think you'll like it. I'm sure you'll like it. It's right here. Just click on it. Yeah, just click on it. We'll see you guys next week.